I'm not sharing a bed with you. The words hung in the freezing air, sharp and cutting, much like the woman who spoke them. Victoria, my editor-in-chief, stood in the center of the dusty, abandoned cabin, clutching her cashmere coat tighter around her frame. Her silhouette was rigid, her jaw set. Even here, stranded in the middle of a freak blizzard in upstate New York with no cell service and a car buried in a snowbank, she looked like she was ready to fire someone for the inconvenience. "Victoria," I said, my teeth already chattering. "It's 10 degrees below zero out there. The windows in here are cracked. There is one mattress. If we don't share body heat, we are literally going to freeze to death." She looked at the rusted iron bed frame in the corner, then back at me with eyes like shattered glass. "I would rather freeze, Harper. Talk about an icy reception, right? We're just getting started with how this night unfolds. If you enjoy stories about melting the coldest of hearts, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell right now. It helps us bring more of these romances to life for you." Okay, back to the blizzard. I sighed, watching a puff of white breath leave my lips. I knew Victoria hated me. Well, maybe hate was a strong word, but she definitely didn't see me. To her, I was just the junior editor who fetched the coffee, checked the manuscripts for typos, and occasionally stumbled over my words in meetings because her intense, blue-eyed gaze made my brain short-circuit. "Fine," I said, moving toward the bed. It was an old mattress, probably left by hunters decades ago, but it was off the floor. I grabbed the moth-eaten wool blanket folded at the foot of it and shook it out. Dust motes danced in the fading gray light. "I'm taking the bed. You can stand there and maintain your dignity while turning into an ice sculpture. But when you get tired, I won't kick you out." Victoria didn't move. She just watched me sit down on the edge of the mattress, pulling the scratchy wool up to my chin. The silence in the cabin was deafening, broken only by the howling wind outside battering the thin wooden walls. An hour passed. Then 2. The temperature dropped rapidly as the sun vanished completely. I could feel the cold seeping through the floorboards, biting at my toes through my boots. I was shivering violently now, but I refused to beg her again. Then I heard it. A soft, involuntary gasp from the corner of the room. I squinted into the darkness. Victoria had slid down the wall and was sitting on the floor, her knees pulled to her chest. She was shaking so hard her teeth were audibly clicking. "Victoria," I said, my voice softer this time. "Please." She didn't argue. She couldn't. Her pride had finally been defeated by the hypothermia setting in. I heard the rustle of her expensive coat as she stood up on unsteady legs. She walked to the bed, her movements stiff and jerky. This stays between us," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "If you tell HR, or anyone at the office." "I know," I said, lifting the blanket. "Get in." She climbed in, fully clothed, keeping her back to me. The mattress dipped, and for a moment, we lay there, stiff as boards, with a foot of freezing space between us. But the blanket was thin, and the air was ruthless. "I can't feel my hands," she whispered after a few minutes. The fear in her voice was something I'd never heard before. This was the woman who made authors cry. The woman who shredded manuscripts with a red pen and a smirk. She sounded small. "Come here," I said. I didn't wait for permission. I scooted across the mattress and wrapped my arm around her waist, pulling her flush against me. She stiffened instantly, gasping as my body made contact with hers. "Harper." "Shoo," I murmured, pressing my chest against her back. "Just let me warm you up." I took her frozen hands in mine and rubbed them, blowing warm air onto her fingers. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the tension began to leave her frame. She stopped shivering. The heat from my body was seeping into hers, creating a cocoon of warmth under the rough wool. Then, she turned. In the darkness, her face was inches from mine. I couldn't see her clearly, but I could feel her breath, warm and erratic, fanning across my lips. "You're so warm," she whispered, as if accusing me of a crime. "It's a survival trait," I joked weakly, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I was sure she could feel it. Victoria moved her hand, her fingers trailing up my arm, resting on my neck. Her skin was still cool, but her touch sent a bolt of lightning straight to my core. "Why are you so good to me, Harper?" "I'm awful to you." You're demanding, I corrected. You're a perfectionist. You're brilliant. There's a difference. She let out a shaky breath. I'm terrified, she admitted, her voice dropping an octave. Not of the storm. Of this. Of sharing a bed. Of needing someone. The vulnerability broke me. I reached up, my hand cupping her cheek. Her skin was soft, a stark contrast to her sharp personality. It's okay to need warmth, Victoria. Everyone does. She leaned into my touch, closing the gap between us until our foreheads rested together. The dynamic shifted. The boss and the employee dissolved, leaving just two women in the dark, desperate for life, desperate for connection. Harper, she breathed. Then she kissed me. It wasn't a tentative, careful kiss. It was desperate. It was the storm outside brought indoors. Her lips were cool at first, but they heated up instantly against mine. Her hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer until there was no air left between us. I groaned into the kiss, my arms wrapping tighter around her, anchoring her to me. It felt like falling off a cliff and realizing you could fly. Victoria kissed with the same intensity she ran her magazine, dominant, exacting, and overwhelming. She bit my lower lip gently, a silent demand for entrance, and when I opened for her, the kiss deepened into something slow and intoxicating. We lay there for what felt like hours, tangled together, trading kisses that ranged from fierce to incredibly tender. The cold air of the cabin didn't matter anymore. We were burning up. I thought you hated me, I whispered against her neck later, my fingers tracing the line of her spine through her sweater. Victoria buried her face in my shoulder, inhaling sharply. I was trying to, she murmured. It was easier than admitting that I've wanted to drag you into a supply closet for the last 6 months. I laughed, the sound vibrating through both of us. The supply closet? That's not very professional, editor-in-chief. Fire me, she teased, pressing a soft kiss to my collarbone. We eventually fell asleep like that, limbs intertwined, her head on my chest, my warmth keeping her alive, and her fire keeping me from ever wanting to leave this frozen cabin. The morning sun hit my eyelids like a sledgehammer. I groaned, shifting on the lumpy mattress. The storm had passed. Brilliant, blinding white light was pouring through the cracked windows. The cabin was freezing again, but I felt warm. I opened my eyes to find the bed empty. Panic seized my chest. Had I dreamt it? Had she walked out into the snow? Drink this. I sat up. Victoria was standing by the door, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. She turned to me, holding a tin cup she must have found in the cupboards. She had managed to start a small fire in the rusted pot-belly stove I hadn't even noticed the night before. She looked perfect. Somehow. Her hair was smoothed back, her coat buttoned up. The armor was back on. My heart sank. Victoria. She walked over and handed me the cup. It was just hot water, but it was steaming. The snowplows are clearing the main road, she said, her voice crisp. We can probably walk back to the car in an hour. Oh, I said, taking the cup. Right. Back to work. I looked down at the dark water, feeling a lump form in my throat. It was over. The magic of the night had evaporated with the blizzard. We were back to boss and employee. Harper, she said. I looked up. She wasn't looking at me with her editor glare. She was looking at me with soft, terrified eyes. She reached out, her fingers brushing my cheek, the same spot she had caressed before she kissed me. I meant what I said, she told me quietly. About the supply closet. I blinked. You did. A small, genuine smile tugged at the corner of her lips. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. When we get back to the city, she said, leaning down so her lips were inches from my ear, I'm promoting you. I can't have my girlfriend as my subordinate. It's against HR policy. My breath hitched. Girlfriend. She pulled back, raising an eyebrow. Unless you'd prefer to stay in this cabin and freeze? I set the cup down and grabbed the lapels of her cashmere coat, pulling her down onto the mattress with me. She shrieked with laughter, a sound I stored away immediately, as she landed on top of me. I think, I said, looking up into those blue eyes that were no longer icy, but bright and warm, I can handle a promotion. And as she kissed me again, right there in the morning light, I knew that while the editor-in-chief might not share a bed with just anyone, she was definitely going to share her life with me.